Amazing transformation, Black CEO's seat stolen by white passenger. Discover what happened next. The airport lounge buzzed with the hum of conversation like a hive swarming with activity. Marcus, a 35-year-old black CEO, felt the familiar pressure in his chest as he stepped through the glass doors. Today was pivotal. The meeting ahead promised to catapult his tech startup into the limelight. Yet, as he descended deeper into the lounge, he couldn't shake the quiet weight of expectations tied to his family's sacrifices. His mother had juggled multiple jobs to give him a shot at this life, but the echoes of prejudice still gripped him tightly. He scanned the room, seeking his reserved seat that had come to symbolize not just a moment of rest but a hard-earned haven. His heart plummeted when he caught sight of it. Another passenger, unassuming and relaxed, sprawled across what he considered his territory. Instinctively, indignation flared within him, pushing against self-doubt. Who was this man to claim what wasn't his? Should he confront him, or was it better to let it slide, bolstering the notion that he was too tested by the weight of the world to be bothered? As he hesitated, he recognized the stranger's face. It was Dave, who had once mentored him at university, offering vital insights yet silently reinforcing doubts. Memories surged, feeling inspired yet diminished, hopeful yet limited. Anger coiled tightly inside Marcus, wrestling with the sharp pangs of nostalgia. This was not just about a seat, it was about a history of mentorship tainted with unspoken prejudice. Could he confront a man who once held his dreams in hand, only to let them slip away? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He stood frozen, the air around him thickening with conflicting emotions. Should he speak up for himself, to reclaim the space he so desperately needed? Or would that only escalate the tension, potentially screwing with his focus? The pulse of the lounge echoed around him, each traveler's moment resembling his own struggle. His mother's voice cut through the chaos. Dignity, Marcus. Perseverance, she had taught him. The lessons from her weathered hands clenched firmly in his mind. This was not just about the seat. Would standing up in this moment reinforce his identity as a man who had worked tooth and nail to reach this point, or add another disappointment to the pile? Time seemed to halt, the entire room awaiting his next move. The confused expression on Dave's face shifted into something akin to recognition, igniting an internal battle, fear of confrontation clashing with the need to carve out his space in the world. Would he launch a verbal disruptor in a setting that demanded polished professionalism, or would he let this instance of injustice slip by, dwindling in a narrative where he has fought so hard to belong? The urging tension wouldn't yield, it only intensified, and all eyes lingered on him. What choice would he make next, and how much of his identity would he reshape in this pivotal confrontation? The questions spun around, leaving the air thick with unspoken possibility. The weight of silence bore down on Marcus as he focused on Dave. The man's relaxed posture and casual demeanor felt like an insult, a manifestation of the privilege that had often overshadowed his own accomplishments. Marcus inhaled deeply, pushing aside the tide of anger rising within him. This moment wasn't merely about reclaiming a seat, it was an opportunity to affirm himself in a world that had frequently tried to diminish him. "Dave," he began, his voice steady but laced with an underlying tension, "I think you're in my seat." Each word was calculated, aiming not to ignite hostility but to reclaim his space without flaring tempers. The vulnerability of confronting an old mentor felt raw, yet it sparked in him an unexpected empowerment. Dave blinked, caught off guard and momentarily fumbling as he looked up. Recognition shifted into a flash of discomfort, as if he'd just realized he was something other than an unnoticed traveler. "Oh, Marcus," he stammered, the casualness eroding away. "I didn't realize it was reserved for you. My apologies." The air changed almost instantly. As Dave adjusted his posture and made room, a sense of victory unfurled inside Marcus. It was a small triumph, yet it felt monumental. He had stood up not just for a physical space but for every moment of self-doubt he had endured. Taking his place, Marcus absorbed the scenery around him. He noticed the playlist of emotions etched on the faces of passing travelers, anxieties mirrored in others, a collective ambition pulsing through the lounge. Yet a gnawing question lingered: had this assertiveness come too late? Was it enough to break free from a pattern that had long since woven itself into the fabric of his professional life? He pulled out his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It was time to prepare for the meeting, a critical juncture that could redefine his company's future. There was no room for hesitance now. Watching the cursor blink at him, he recalled his mother's words. Dignity and perseverance weren't just lessons, they were an ethos he now clung to. Have you been keeping up with the latest industry trends, Marcus? Dave's voice interrupted his reverie, genuine curiosity mixed with an undercurrent of evaluation. Your startup is really making waves. Swallowing down the pride that threatened to rise, Marcus placed his hands firmly on the keyboard. He minimized his personal stakes in this exchange, redirecting the conversation. I've been focusing on user feedback and refining our algorithms to better serve underrepresented communities. It's crucial for us to keep pushing boundaries. As they spoke, Marcus could feel a shift within himself. Dave, who had once seemed a towering figure of authority, was now just a man seeking sound advice from someone who had outgrown the boundaries of youthful dependency. He realized that if he could navigate this interaction with a renewed sense of purpose, what else could he accomplish? The meeting loomed, but now the ripple of confidence urged him onward. He thought of his team. Their success depended on his ability to command the room, to turn the weight of oppression into executive gravitas. Each word he shared at the meeting would be a stepping stone toward that realization. How had he not seen it before? As he finished drafting his presentation, a familiar name flashed in his mind: Simon, the venture capitalist who had dismissed his ideas during their last conversation. The mingled pain of resentment and resolve surged within him as he recalled the way Simon had looked through him as if he were invisible. It was time to confront that dismissal, to challenge the narrative that had so long played in his mind. Marcus tucked his laptop under his arm, the determination coursing through him as he ventured toward his meeting. He would not merely show up, he would take control of the narrative. With each step, the pulse of opportunity thrummed louder. He could feel change vibrating through every fiber of his being. As he neared the boardroom, a step into the unknown beckoned. It was time to confront allies and foes alike, to redefine his space in the world of corporate America. The moment had arrived to face Simon again. Would he rise to the occasion or fall back into the shadows? As he stood outside the sleek glass doors of the boardroom, Marcus felt every nerve in his body alive with anticipation. The voices inside were muffled, but he could sense the tensions that flowed between colleagues and investors like an electric current. It was a nerve-wracking mix of adrenaline and doubt, yet he couldn't afford to dwell on it. Today would be different. Today, he would assert his worth. With a determined breath, he opened the door and strode in, feeling the weight of his presence shift the atmosphere. Heads turned, conversations paused, and he was met with a mix of surprise and scrutiny. Simon sat at the far end of the table, fingers steepled, a knowing smile curling at the edges of his lips. The memory of their previous encounter surged through him, a reminder of the condescension etched in Simon's dismissive words. Marcus resolved not to give him the satisfaction of appearing anything less than confident. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began, projecting his voice with clarity. "I appreciate the opportunity to take the floor today." He slid into the presentation, seamlessly weaving through statistics and insights on market trends, emphasizing the need for innovation to meet the demands of an increasingly diverse clientele. His delivery was animated, words flowing with an enthusiasm he had often suppressed in past meetings. He spoke of strategy and vision, illuminating his company's mission and the tangible differences they were making for the communities they served. He made eye contact with key investors, drawing them into the narrative and inviting them to engage. When he paused for questions, he saw Simon leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, a skeptical arch to his brow. The challenge was palpable. Marcus could practically hear Simon's inner monologue questioning his credibility. With a calm resolve, he turned to address Simon directly. "Simon, I remember our previous conversation about potential risks associated with our approach. Since then, we've gathered more data, and I believe it's essential we examine the evolving landscape instead of relying solely on conventional metrics." Marcus's heart raced as Simon's expression shifted from disbelief to intrigue. There it was, the crack in the facade, and it fueled Marcus's determination. Simon leaned forward, tapping a finger against his chin, clearly taken aback. "Interesting take, Marcus. But how do you plan to measure the success of these changes beyond your current analytics?" It was the moment he had prepared for, the intersection of vulnerability and strength. "We will implement longitudinal studies to capture user experiences over time, ensuring we adapt in real time, thereby enhancing our predictive capabilities. Success will be defined not just by numbers, but by the tangible impact we have on our customers' lives." With that, he could feel the winds of hesitation shift in his favor. Discussions flowed. Colleagues chimed in with enthusiasm, and the atmosphere twisted from skeptical to supportive. As they wrapped up, Simon offered a nod, acknowledging not just the idea, but Marcus himself. It was subtle, but it resonated deeply in Marcus's chest. This was acknowledgement not as a black man navigating white-dominated spaces, but as a leader with the expertise to back it up. As he left the boardroom, buoyed by the experience, Marcus realized it was only the beginning. The confidence that had ignited within him needed nurturing. He must continue to harness it. The fight against internalized biases and external dismissals was ongoing, but this victory was foundational. He stepped into the corridor, ready to engage the rest of the day with an unwavering belief in his abilities. However, lurking at the back of his mind was a new dilemma. Although Simon had relented, could he genuinely partner with someone who had once dismissed him so blindly? Marcus took a moment to collect himself. The road ahead promised not just challenges, but opportunities for growth as well. He had gained ground, but trust was a more intricate battlefield. What would it take to forge a genuine alliance where once there was only condescension? With a sigh, he grasped his phone, dialing a number he had avoided for far too long. It was time to reconnect with some of his former allies, to leverage his new confidence and to shape a narrative that wasn't solely dictated by his past. As the phone rang, anticipation charged the air around him. Was he ready to confront the complexities of an ever-evolving professional landscape? Marcus's phone connected, and the familiar voice of Andrea, his longtime mentor, filled the silence. As they exchanged pleasantries, Marcus felt the need for guidance more than ever. The victory in the boardroom had reinvigorated his spirit, but it had also laid bare the weight of expectations, his own and those from others. "Marcus, it's great to hear from you. What's on your mind?" Andrea asked, her tone laced with genuine curiosity. Taking a breath, he shared the details of the board meeting, how he had seized the moment to assert his vision, and the unexpected flicker of respect in Simon's eyes. He felt a thrill recounting how he had addressed the skepticism head-on. "That sounds remarkable," Andrea responded. "But I detect some hesitation. What's really bothering you?" Marcus hesitated. His achievements felt tinged with an underlying anxiety. "I can't shake the feeling that this approval might be fleeting. Simon's recognition was one thing, working alongside him long-term feels like a risk. Can I trust him? And how do I navigate this newfound dynamic?" "Trust is built, not given, Marcus. You may need to approach this relationship cautiously. Use this opportunity to assert clear boundaries and expectations. You earned this position, and you're entitled to advocate for yourself." Her words were a lifeline as doubt crept in. As she expounded on navigating professional alliances, Marcus started to envision potential strategies. He could leverage Simon's acknowledgement as a bridge to further solidify his standing while also carefully delineating his objectives. Build the relationships with an agenda in mind, but be authentic. Speak to Simon's strengths to create common ground, Andrea suggested thoughtfully. And never forget that success is multidimensional. It involves maneuvering through the politics and still staying true to your vision. After hanging up, Marcus felt a renewed sense of clarity. He wrote down a list of actionable steps to foster a thriving partnership with Simon, linking them back to his recent insights. Each item felt like a stepping stone toward not just collaboration but genuine respect. Conversing with Andrea had reminded him that his journey wasn't solely about proving himself, it was about thriving alongside others, even those who hadn't fully seen his worth at first. In the days that followed, Marcus began implementing these strategies. He initiated conversations with Simon that were more than just transactional. He sought alignment on goals and values. He asked for Simon's input on projects and began recommending ideas that reflected a synthesis of their perspectives. Each meeting became a space for Marcus to assert his insights while acknowledging Simon's expertise. Yet, with each passing day, an unsettling thought churned within him: was he compromising too much in these negotiations? While he made strides in collaboration, he wrestled internally with aligning his ambitions with Simon's agenda. The tougher moments gave way to opportunities for tensions as they discussed direction, sometimes clashing over approach and ideology. This friction ignited within Marcus a deeper desire to maintain his integrity amidst partnership challenges. As winter approached, the promises of new projects loomed with deadlines that tightened the air around the office. Each completed task felt triumphant, yet the pressure danced over his shoulders like a heavy cloak. Could he maintain this balancing act? One afternoon, after a particularly strenuous meeting, Marcus stopped at the office cafe, seeking a moment of quiet. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard a conversation that piqued his interest: a couple of team members discussing an opportunity that seemed to shift a foundational element of their product strategy. What had initially sounded like an innocent chat became an intricate web of discontent directed toward the leadership team. His instincts kicked in. Here was an opportunity to act, to confront the very dynamics that unsettled the company culture and challenge the direction Simon had prescribed. But did he have enough capital, both relational and positional, to rally his peers? It was a pivotal moment. The time had come to face the deeper issues beneath the surface, to emerge not just as a participant in the game but as a solid force for change. Could he rise to the occasion and assert leadership when the stakes were higher than ever? Marcus found himself at a crossroads, the weight of unaddressed grievances swirling in the air around him. Each sip of his coffee, normally a comforting ritual, tasted bitter as he considered the implications of what he had overheard. The murmurs at the cafe held a powerful truth: his colleagues were discontent, feeling unheard in the strategic decisions that shaped their professional lives. This discomfort echoed his own frustrations and cranked up the heat on his simmering uncertainties. What if this was the chance he had been waiting for? He was keenly aware that if he remained passive, he risked becoming just another cog in the machine, lacking the influence to effect real change. He envisioned a forum where open communication could flourish and all perspectives could be considered, pushing back against Simon's rigid framework. But could he instigate such a gathering? A rush of adrenaline surged through him. He needed to crystallize his thoughts into a coherent plan. Digging out a napkin from his pocket, he began scribbling an outline: invite a mix of voices, frame the discussion around innovation and collaboration, and emphasize the importance of everyone feeling invested in the direction of their product strategy. But lurking in the background was doubt. Would Simon view this as undermining his authority, or could it serve as a platform for shared ideas? Determined, Marcus spent the next couple of evenings crafting an email arrangement for one-on-one discussions with critical team members, gauging their sentiments to build a stronger understanding of the situation. He needed to clarify his intentions, to ensure that these conversations were as much about listening as they were about leading. Each conversation revealed more frustration, and yet, every acknowledgement of their dissatisfaction etched a deeper sense of purpose within him. One meeting stood out in particular with Lisa, a sharp and ambitious operations manager who had remained on the fringes of leadership discussions. Her candor pierced through the ambient office noise, resonating in a way that propelled Marcus forward. "Marcus, you have a unique position right now. You're not entirely in Simon's shadow, and your voice matters. But we need a leader who can genuinely reflect our concerns while pushing innovative ideas." Her words struck a chord deep within, forcing Marcus to re-evaluate how he could merge his ambitions with the collective aspirations of the team. That was the crux of his moral dilemma, to empower himself without alienating those around him. He spent days refining the email and positioning it carefully to appeal to both Simon and the team. He framed it not as a challenge, but as a call to discussion and opportunity to brainstorm path-breaking strategies, capitalizing on the diverse insights they had. What if Simon could be brought on board, recognizing that inclusivity might yield better results than his directive approach? Once sent, Marcus oscillated between hope and anxiety. He decommitted to this path, but how would Simon react? Would he begrudge Marcus for advocating a shift? After all the groundwork they laid together, could his ambitions coexist with the need for collaboration? Days passed in an agonizing spiral of waiting. The anxiety of the unknown gnawed at him. He stirred in meetings, acutely aware of Simon's scrutinizing gaze. Conversations around the office hummed with anticipation. The email had ignited a spark among colleagues who were curious about where this new dialogue would lead. Then, during a critical strategy meeting, Simon turned to Marcus. "I've seen your email and appreciate your initiative," he said, causing every heartbeat in the room to echo. "But we need to ensure our direction stays cohesive. What's your take on how we proceed?" At that moment, it was clear that the game had shifted. He had initiated a dialogue not just about the product but about power dynamics at play, challenging the status quo that Simon had comfortably maintained. Marcus took a breath, sensing the weight of the moment. This was his chance to mold the discussion, to potentially reshape the future before them. Yet, it simultaneously raised an urgent question: could he lead this change while still maintaining balance without getting dragged into a power struggle? As he prepared to articulate his vision, his resolve solidified. This was not just about personal ambitions anymore, it was a collective evolution that demanded decisive leadership. He was ready to confront the complexities of collaboration, but uncertainty loomed like thick fog on the horizon. Would they stand behind him as he took this leap into uncharted territory? Marcus felt the weight of the room as Simon's gaze bore into him, and he recognized that this moment would define his trajectory. The ever-present tension between his own ambitions and the needs of his team surged to the forefront of his mind, a turbulent sea beneath a visage of calm. "Thank you, Simon," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts raggedly swirling within. "What I'm proposing is that we take a step back to reassess our product strategies by bringing in diverse perspectives from the team. I'm convinced that opening the floor for discussion will only help us align our initiative and energize our trajectory." His words hung in the air, ripe for reception or rejection, and he braced for Simon's reply. Silence stretched uncomfortably, laden with the tension of unspoken conflicts and alliances. Simon folded his arms tightly, his expression unreadable. "You think a group discussion will solve the issues we've faced? Cohesion comes from decisiveness, Marcus." Marcus felt his heart quicken, a primal instinct urging him to retreat, but he stood firm. He had come too far to shrink back now. "I believe cohesion can also thrive through collaboration," he countered, his resolve hardening. "The more we listen and build together, the stronger we become. Not every innovation emerges from the top down, sometimes ideas blossom from the ground up." A flicker of uncertainty passed across Simon's brow, but his confidence quickly recomposed like a fresh coat of paint over lingering cracks. "Let's say I give this a shot. What's your plan for managing dissent or differing opinions in this collaborative space?" The question opened the floodgates of uncertainty once more, but Marcus recognized it as an opportunity. It wasn't just Simon he needed to persuade, it was the entire organization that needed to shift. By establishing clear guidelines for discussion, we foster a respectful environment. We can create ground rules where all ideas are valued, even the most radical ones. This isn't about shoving someone's perspective to the side, it's about recognizing that every voice adds value to the big picture. He watched as some heads around the table nodded. The curiosity was palpable, albeit cautious. This was as much a pitch to Simon as it was a clarion call to the others who sat tethered by their own apprehensions. "Let's try it on a smaller scale first," Simon relented, his voice slightly softer, exposed to the germ of Marcus's vision. "A team meeting where everyone can voice their thoughts, but I want to be there to maintain structure." Marcus felt a surge of relief and renewed vigor. "Thank you, Simon. I think it could yield surprising results." This mindset shift was not just a potential victory for him but a definitive step toward collective empowerment. As the meeting wrapped up, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling of inevitability. On one hand, Marcus felt a wave of optimism that the team might finally find their voice, but on the other, a tight knot of foreboding gripped his chest. This collaboration had its risks. What if this backfired, or Simon ultimately disagreed with the conclusions drawn? The next few days were a frenzy of preparations. Marcus detailed an agenda, inviting team members to share insights driven by their experiences, and he worked on positioning himself not as the leader but as a facilitator. He felt the stirrings of growth in himself as he balanced the dual roles of organizer and participant. There was a thrill coursing through him, an adrenaline rush that spoke of potential. The day of the meeting arrived, charged with palpable energy. Colleagues gathered around, some wearing apprehensive looks, others hopeful. As he moderated the conversation, he pushed past the self-doubt that threatened to creep in. He was no longer just Marcus, a cog in the system. He was Marcus, the catalyst for change. As discussions erupted, varied viewpoints collided and merged, igniting a creative fire. Yet, Marcus sensed underlying tensions bubbling beneath the surface, the risk of discord still prevalent. Could he continue to steer the ship amid these unforeseen conflicts? Just as he began feeling a profound sense of accomplishment, Lisa caught his eye from across the room, worry etched into her features. She subtly nodded toward Simon, who was leaning against the door, arms crossed and watching with that familiar scrutinizing gaze. The moment crystallized for Marcus. This was his defining moment. Would he embrace this emerging leadership role, even as Simon's scrutiny loomed like a specter in the shadows? He took a deep breath as the discussions loomed toward a climax, and the necessity of his own internal resolve surged to the forefront. This was an opportunity not only to share ideas but to confront the precarious balance of power that dictated their work environment. The pivotal question remained suspended in the air: could he sustain this momentum, or was he on the brink of an inevitable confrontation with the very authority he sought to transform? The air crackled with energy as voices swirled around Marcus, a kaleidoscope of opinions and ideas merging into a cacophony of chaos. He felt the weight of the moment sinking in. The echoes of his earlier determination resonated in stark contrast to the rising tide of division. Each comment seemed to pull the collective mood tighter, threading tension through the room like a thick rope. A voice cut through the din, quick and confident. "Well, if we're just going to share our ideas without any sort of filtering, how will we ever reach a decision?" It was Greg, a veteran team member known for his bluntness. The unyielding honesty of his questions served as both a challenge and an invitation. Marcus's heart thudded in his chest. He needed to address Greg's concern without dismissing the energy of the moment. "That's a fair point, Greg," he responded, pulling in a breath to steady himself. "But we need to recognize that innovation often lives in the unresolved spaces. What if instead of eliminating ideas prematurely, we allow for a robust exploration of all possibilities? We can always refine them later." Simon's eyes narrowed, still fixed on Marcus with an intensity that felt like a spotlight. Through this trial by fire, Marcus discerned something crucial. It was more than just a team meeting. It was a litmus test for his authority, his vision, and ultimately, his growth in this corporate landscape that often felt hostile to change. As hands raised and voices layered over one another, Marcus felt that initial tide of fear recede. His role had evolved, he was no longer a passive conductor but an active player in orchestrating the conversation. What began as a floundering attempt to secure a supportive structure had morphed into a vibrant celebration of ideas. But he also noticed something darker churning below the surface. A group of traditionalists sat apart, sharing glances that spoke of skepticism and dismissal. Their resistance felt palpable, a latent threat to the optimism now pulsing through the team. The atmosphere strained with potential division, and Marcus understood that navigating this was now part of his responsibility. In a sudden surge of authority, he called for focus. "Let us capture the key themes emerging here before we get lost in the noise," he said decisively, driving the conversation toward synthesis. Ideas that sparked brightness transformed through discussion, and for each critical observation, he noted the fear flickering in some of his colleagues' eyes. He wanted to reassure them. "Remember, there are no bad ideas here, our goal is to start a dialogue that elevates our work. Think of this as the beginning of a journey rather than a destination." Just as the room began to stabilize, Simon inserted himself with a pointed objection. "Fantastic in theory, Marcus, but without practical outcomes, this is just idle talk." The challenge hung heavily, a gauntlet thrown at Marcus's feet. Did Simon seek to undermine him, or was he genuinely testing the waters? The line was thin and required delicate maneuvering. Marcus was acutely aware that every response could either strengthen or unravel the fragile momentum. He hesitated, feeling a mix of indignation and understanding. This was a pivotal moment not just about the meeting but about how he chose to respond to Simon's provocation. "I appreciate your perspective, Simon. Ensuring results is crucial, but we must balance structure with creativity to truly innovate. Let me reassure the team, after we gather these ideas, we'll distill them into actionable steps." A ripple of agreement spread among the participants, momentarily edging the tension away. Still, Marcus felt the gravity of Simon's watchful gaze. He realized this contest was shaping his trajectory in ways he couldn't fully grasp yet. He was not just championing collective input, he was wholly redefining what leadership could be within these walls. As the meeting progressed, a collective sense of ownership began to replace the earlier discord. Colleagues who had clung to skepticism began to share, and from that sharing emerged a tableau of ideas none had anticipated. But as the meeting drew to a close, Marcus spotted Lisa again, concern rippling through her brow. In that moment, he confronted a gnawing doubt: was this merely the opening act? What if the real challenge lay ahead, a reckoning that would expose the precarious balance of support he felt from his peers? With a mixture of pride and apprehension, Marcus acknowledged the distance yet to traverse. What began so chaotically seemed to stem toward something far greater, but could he hold on to the reins? Just as he opened his mouth to propose next steps, the door creaked, and Simon stepped forward, shadows of authority trailing behind him. "Let us see how you manage this moving forward, Marcus," Simon declared, a statement layered with implications that could deepen the chasm or bridge it. Marcus gripped the edge of the table, a choice stalking through his mind like a predator waiting to pounce. Was he ready to confront Simon's authority directly, risking not just his vision, but the fragile trust he had begun to forge among his colleagues? The stakes had shifted, and he felt the truth of it settle deep within his core. He was on the brink of transformation. But at what cost would it come? Marcus could feel the weight of Simon's stare as he took a moment to collect his thoughts, every heartbeat amplifying the stakes. This was not just a matter of leading a meeting, it was about carving out a space for his own authority in a landscape that had always favored established hierarchies. The office had its prescribed roles, and Simon was a formidable fixture in that structure. The balance had tipped, and Marcus could no longer strain against the tide. As Simon turned to address the rest of the team, Marcus seized the moment, pivoting on the tension that had just, seconds ago, threatened to deflate the progress he had made. "Before we leave today, I'd like to set up a follow-up meeting where we can outline the practical steps to implement some of the concepts discussed," he asserted, his voice steady, straddling the sieve between assertiveness and collaboration. "A follow-up meeting?" Simon interrupted, lacing his question with sardonic disbelief. Because we just saw how well that worked. It was a calculated jab meant to prod Marcus, to expose any cracks in his confidence. The room fell silent, the onlookers awaited a response, their eyes veering back and forth between their leader and Simon. He could sense their uncertainty, the cautious optimism they had begun to nurture clashing with the old guard skepticism. This was a defining moment. He breathed deeply, grounding himself in the knowledge he had gained through his interaction with this team. Every successful initiative begins with a forward-moving plan, Marcus countered, his voice rising slightly above Simon's, summoning the energy of the room. This team has a wealth of ideas that can propel us forward, and we need to give them the chance to evolve. I'm proposing a collaborative framework. He watched as a few heads nodded encouragement from colleagues he had barely realized were supportive. For the first time, he felt an expansive shift within himself. He had transformed from an uncertain participant into a leader challenging the generational constraints that had long dictated the organization's culture. Simon's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing further. Call it what you will, Marcus. Let us see this collaboration deliver results. His words were sharp, but Marcus interpreted them as Simon choosing to be an adversary instead of an ally. Each exchange would shape the battleground that lay ahead. As he left the meeting, Marcus felt a mixture of adrenaline and dread. The ensuing silence of the office would have to be filled with action. This was no longer just about seeking acceptance from his peers, it was about establishing the legitimacy of his vision, his approach. He needed to find the common ground among the conflicting ideas and individuals, to embolden those silent voices and integrate them into his nascent strategy. Zipping through emails later that day, Marcus drafted a comprehensive agenda for the follow-up meeting, one that highlighted objectives, timelines, and points of discussion for everyone involved. Drawing upon the ideas generated in the previous meeting, he mapped out pathways for collaboration-specific roles assigned, timelines established. He recognized the need to frame this discussion so everyone felt ownership, not just direction. But in the back of his mind, the confrontation with Simon nagged at him. Was he bold enough to take this confrontation into the next phase? He knew he could not ignore the gravity of Simon's unease, nor the deeper patterns of resistance it represented within the company. Would Simon simply allow his influence to be challenged, or would he push back harder? The following day, as Marcus entered the conference room for the follow-up meeting, anticipation coiled tightly in his gut. There would be more than strategizing on the table, he would need to navigate the delicate dance of authority and influence. As he prepared to speak, he caught a glimpse of Simon in the corner of his eye, his presence lingering on the edge of the room. In that instant, Marcus realized that every step forward would require a reconsideration of the relationships he formed. Today, he began, channeling every ounce of determination he possessed, we forge our collective path. But I need us to have a candid conversation about aligning our visions. Perhaps it's time we assessed the foundations of our perceived limitations. Each word felt like a stepping stone into an uncertain territory. The challenge was laid, the question now was whether he could withstand the ripple effect of his challenge. Would Simon confront him directly again, and if so, how much would he have to risk to fortify his new position? The door opened, and in walked a member of upper management with a notice in hand. The atmosphere shifted again as the news unfolded, unanticipated and charged with promises. All eyes turned toward Marcus, and he could feel the stakes rising once more as the tension thickened like fog. Was he prepared for this new revelation that had the potential to reshape everything? Marcus sensed the palpable shift in the air as the upper management representative stepped into the room, their presence overshadowing the dynamics of the discussion he had just initiated. The newcomer, a short stocky man named Kenneth, held an envelope tightly, a flicker of urgency darting through his eyes. Marcus's heart raced, he could taste the tension mingling with curiosity from the team. "Good morning, everyone," Kenneth started, his voice a mix of authority and uncertainty. "I have some news that will affect our direction moving forward." He paused, gauging the collective breath-holding of the room before continuing. "The company is restructuring, and as a result, several management roles will see adjustments. The implication was immediate. Everyone had heard the whispers of layoffs, but the gravity of a restructuring rippled through the team with an intensity that set Marcus on edge. Simon, always the skeptic and now emboldened by the shift in protocol, leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowed as they locked onto Marcus. "What does this mean for our plans?" His tone dripped with insinuation, as if daring Marcus to falter under pressure. Marcus shifted his weight, refusing to let Simon's challenge rattle him. What he hadn't realized was that this moment was akin to a crucible. Would it forge an unbreakable resolve or merely highlight his vulnerabilities? This was a critical juncture, and he had to present strength in an uncertain landscape. "We need to reframe our approach," he replied, voice steady, slicing through the mounting tension. "This restructuring is an opportunity to redefine our contribution at a critical time. We can use the team's insights to shape the new strategic direction." As uncertainty flickered in the eyes of his colleagues, Marcus took a mental inventory of the people in the room. The previous meeting had revealed potential allies among those who shared his vision: Angela, Prakash, and even Miranda, who had often hesitated to speak up. If he could galvanize their support, they could mitigate Simon's lingering dominance. "Let us harness this opportunity," he continued, shifting from reaction to proactive leadership. "I propose we formally create workgroups tasked with examining new avenues for our projects. Each group can explore challenges and craft proposals to adapt to this change. We can present insights that showcase our value in this new structure." The room began to buzz, the enthusiasm was palpable. He spotted heads nodding thoughtfully, their expressions shifting from shock to intrigue. But Simon crossed his arms, the familiar wariness returning. "Workgroups?" he scoffed, skepticism brimming. "You think more meetings will help? Deliverables take focus. Are you prepared to push for results that satisfy the upper management's expectations?" "More than prepared," Marcus assured, injecting energy into his stance, filled with the urgency of the moment. "However, we can't achieve results if we remain shackled by fear of failure. These proposed groups can foster innovation, enabling us to contribute meaningfully to the upcoming changes." Kenneth observed Marcus closely, prompting a flicker of respect in his gaze. The tension that reverberated between Simon and Marcus wasn't just personal anymore, it had become emblematic of the larger power struggle as the company itself grappled with its evolving identity. As the discussion progressed, Marcus felt a rush of empowerment surging through him. Each cautious nod, every expression of willingness from his colleagues, built a collaborative ecosystem. In this room, they began to plant seeds for change they had long desired but had lacked the instigation to pursue. But when the conversation began to build tangible momentum, Simon interjected with chilling accuracy. "I hope you're ready when the spotlight shines on you, Marcus. I promise, if you stumble, it'll be me there to catch the fallout and let us just say, I have a way of making my voice heard." Marcus locked eyes with Simon, the distance between them charged and fraught. Was Simon hinting at a trap designed to discredit him? The looming confrontation twisted in his gut, igniting a flicker of doubt. Would he survive not just the restructuring but also Simon's crusade to dismantle his authority? He breathed deeply, centering his resolve. "I welcome that challenge, Simon. But know this: I'm committed to this team, and I won't back down from pushing for the future we deserve." A collective intake of breath from the team made it apparent he had crossed a threshold. He had stepped into a realm where his courage was now squarely in the spotlight. As they fleshed out the first workgroup ideas, Marcus felt a profound shift within. The fire of tenacity mingled with strategies nestled at the corner of his mind. But the thrill of validation was soon undercut by the gnawing concern of Simon's looming influence and the unpredictability of management's restructuring plans. As ideas coalesced into actionable items, the orchestration of collaboration carried with it the risk of challenge and potential collapse. "Marcus," Kenneth interrupted, pulling Marcus from his inner thoughts momentarily. "I believe your approach has merit." At those words, the phone on the table buzzed loudly, echoing through the sudden silence. Marshall, the override assistant to the CEO, was calling through the speaker, announcing an urgent session regarding the restructuring decisions. How would this session challenge everything he had just set in motion? Would his newfound role be metamorphosed into something entirely different, or would the tides shift against him, dragging him into difficulties he had yet to foresee? Standing in the conference room, a whirlwind spun around Marcus. The words Kenneth spoke began to settle within him like stones in a stream. Collaboration, strategies, adjustments. These concepts intertwined with the looming specter of Simon's scrutiny and the unpredictability of the executive decisions yet to unfold. Marcus, Kenneth's voice pierced through the chaos once again, his brow furrowed. Your insights into restructuring have merit, and upper management is keen on how you intend to foster this proposed collaboration both for the team and for your own position within the company. As anticipation mounted, Marcus realized this was not merely a test of his strategies but a pivotal moment of transformation. No longer was he grappling merely with colleagues, he was racing towards redefining his trajectory in a corporate landscape rife with obstacles. With determination coursing through his veins, Marcus took a breath, stabilizing both his resolve and the future he envisioned. To uphold our vision, we need to create a synergy of voices, allowing diverse perspectives to drive our outcomes. It's time we embrace the creative potential residing within this team. I believe that by setting clear guidelines for our workgroups, we can ensure their contributions aren't just valid but also invaluable. Marcus felt a change in the atmosphere. His colleagues leaned in, eager to support the shift he was advocating. He could sense the weight of recognition replacing what had once been skepticism. Perhaps Simon's disapproving gaze did not carry the influence he once believed it did. Let us take the time to outline our actionable steps today, he continued, his voice steady. We'll form focused workgroups that will report back, showcasing how fresh ideas and insights can serve our strategy going forward. This isn't just to appease upper management, this is about fostering a culture of innovation. Simon's expression hardened momentarily, but the tension surrounding them was palpable, shifting rapidly as others aligned behind Marcus. Colleagues nodded their agreement. Marcus had emerged not just as a voice but as a potent catalyst for change. As the meeting unfolded, ideas flowed freely from the team, a rush of creative freedom resonating through the air. He saw enthusiasm igniting in people's eyes, energizing the collective synergy he had long yearned for. Real evolution was happening, it was manifesting through the unveiling of individual expertise. By the time the conversation drew to a close, an underlying sense of pride flooded through Marcus. He had ventured beyond stating objections with competence, transformation blossomed in tandem with his action-oriented leadership. The next day, as he prepared for the call with upper management, Marcus felt grounded in the knowledge that he had transitioned. His voice now carried substance, and he sensed the seasoned executives were beginning to recognize him not just as a player but as a leader. We'll demonstrate our commitment to this transition by executing that workgroup initiative, he asserted to the upper management team. By merging our distinct strengths into actionable strategies, we'll not only comply with the restructuring but also enhance our output sustainably. Kenneth nodded appreciatively, leaning on the dynamics shaping Marcus's newfound identity. Investing in collaboration could redefine our culture, Kenneth agreed. People need to see a supportive shift coming through our operations. The call culminated in a commitment from management to support the transition, igniting an opportunity for Marcus to shine. As he stepped out of the conference room, the air felt lighter, filled with the aroma of possibility rather than the bitterness of doubt. Gone were the shackles of fear that had once constricted him. Today, he had not just conquered a meeting but had solidified his position amid the chaos of restructuring. At home that evening, Marcus reflected deeply on the journey ahead. The weight of expectation was still present, but now he bore it with resilient confidence. Overcoming Simon's skepticism hadn't been as debilitating as he had feared. Instead, it fueled his ambition as he navigated the delicate balance of leadership dynamics. He resolved to cultivate the emerging transformative culture, understanding fully that he could lead by example. Not only had he asserted his authority, but he had inspired his colleagues to reclaim their voices too. Tonight, he felt a profound layer of satisfaction washing over him. This fight for collaboration challenged him not just to reach for the impossible, it repositioned his trajectory toward collective innovation. In the weeks that followed, as the workgroups assembled, Marcus found himself in a reaffirming role, empowered by the support of his colleagues and the renewed focus from upper management. They began drafting proposals that echoed the innovative spectrums of their combined ideas. This collaboration revealed itself not just in tangible outcomes but within the evolving narrative of trust and shared vision. Marcus stepped into the role of a collected architect, fortified through deepened connections with his peers. Trust, once elusive, wasn't merely given, it grew through the willingness to adapt and challenge limits together. Each weekend presented opportunities to refine his strategy, to share not only the trajectory of their goals but also to understand the diverse experiences of the team members gathered around him. As winter receded into spring, the clarity had molded into something distinct. He was recognized and respected by both his team and upper management, having successfully ushered in the collaborative dynamic he had envisioned. He was not merely a survivor in the corporate streamlined world, he was an essential leader in a new era of inclusive innovation. With a heart full of resolve and triumph, Marcus smiled as he closed his laptop that evening. Transformation was not just a consequence of events but a shared journey worth pursuing. He knew now, with conflict turned growth, that he had achieved not only personal development but had also become a figure of empowerment for those around him. The future awaited, and with every step, he would continue to invite others along the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.